Someone found an empty lube container and a couch in a classroom that was open. What was your school's huge scandal? A geography teacher caught a history teacher banging his wife in the school library. The history teacher was his best man at the wedding. Also, a PE teacher threw a janitor through a door during class. It is regarded as one of the best schools in my country. All that sad. History and geography go so well together. Indeed they did. Apparently both had the same interest. I went to Catholic high school. During my first year there somebody took a speep in the middle of the corridor on the 3rd floor. They never found out who's done it. Boy's dean got caught with a girl in his office. She was 17. It's the reason that office now has a window in the door. I remember back in the early 2000s teachers were telling us that doors should never be closed while alone with a teacher. Teachers were even supposed to avoid being in the room alone, which is why they met students in the hallway. This is true. As a former teacher I learned this during my course. Never ever be alone with a student in a room. Always try to be in an open space with lots of other people. Principal had an affair with my AP Chem teacher. The school board came down hard on the teacher, and she was suspended for most of the year, which sucked because none of us passed the test. Principal got a slap on the wrist, though he ended up quitting at the end of the year. I got confused on why anyone got suspended. I guess relationships between coworkers are okay in my country. Why is that bad? Probably because the principal is technically the boss. It raises potential liability for sexual harassment claims. And it might be in the employer's policies. That would explain the principal's suspension, had it happened. Doesn't explain the teacher's suspension. Welcome to the real world, where the least valuable employee is the one at fault. An ex of mine raised very legitimate bullying complaints against a boss and they just put her in a room saying sign here to be made redundant and no longer work here. Unfortunately was too young and inexperienced at the time to realize the correct response was hang on while I call my lawyer. The gym was called The Rock. Showed up one morning and the R was replaced with a C. This was on a huge gym so it took some time to take down. Good one. A little more than a week after the Parkland shooting, our principal suddenly got on the intercom and told us to evacuate the building. We did, and we hadn't gone through proper evacuation procedures. So we all ended up all over the damn town. One kid literally ran all the way home trying to figure out where we're supposed to go. We all assumed it was a potential bomb threat and got sent home for the day. Over the next week, the school changed their story about 4 times. So a student started freaking the feep out and started trying to figure out what exactly had happened to trigger the evacuation. But 2 things happened that finally made the situation escalate out of control. 1. The principal called us into an assembly and proceeded to blame us for the rumors, as though it was our fault they couldn't get their story straight. 2. Students finally figured out that what had happened was that someone had accidentally left their sandwich in a locker overnight. Then someone smelled the rotting food, got a teacher, and that teacher panicked and caused the evacuation. I think a total of 7 people in all got fired by the time the dust settled. That sounds like some Diary of a Wimpy Kid speep, ha ha ha. Someone found an empty lube container and a couch in a classroom that was generally open. They got rid of the couch. A kid also drove a dirt bike through the halls and got arrested. You can't drive that in here. Yes I can. It's all-terrain dummy. We had a ban on bringing our own bottles to school and could only purchase drinks from the school store because there was an alcohol problem. Kids would come to school with pretty much anything they could get their hands on and would start drinking in first period. One day, before the ban, they did a sweep in first period and had everyone open their water bottles and check what was inside. I think there were over 50 kids caught that day. We also had a problem with opioids. Ambulances were there at least twice a year to get someone that overdosed in the gym. Back in the olden days, weed was more of the problem. They brought in an undercover cop posing as a student, and he befriended those voted most likely to be a dealer. Busted half a dozen kids, as I recall. At my school, they just paid students to snitch on each other. You got 200 if you gave information leading to a successful bust. Man, my bullies would have been in so much trouble. Not that they dealt with drugs, but because ours was super easy to slip something into someone's locker. I guess this is one since it made the regional news. Was that a French teacher had vocabulary test where you would stand by the closed classroom door and he would quiz you on the repeated French vocabulary errors you made. If made the mistake again he would lightly underhand toss a volleyball at the back of your head. A student had recorded on their phone and once a parent found out they went straight to the news. I know my mom started freaking out and my older brother said yes he remembers it and it apparently improved vocabulary and grammar. My school had a few in the span of the 4 years I was there, and a few since I graduated. In the middle school that fed into my high school, a wrestling coach got caught sexting and sleeping statutory rape with a student. That student went to my high school the next year, and by December, it came out that the school's security guard was sexting and sleeping with the same girl. A girl in my year died from a heroin overdose, and a guy that was with her at the time hesitated on calling an ambulance because then he'd get in trouble cause he supplied the heroin. How a lot of fights happen in our central area during passing periods. A guy from another school in our district went missing. Turned up a few days later, having died via suicide. His girlfriend, I think, may have just been a close friend, stepped in front of a train the next day. This girl was actually a prior fling of a buddy of mine's, still understandably a sore subject with him. Longtime science teacher got caught in a prostitution sting and was forced to resign. Hanged himself a few days later. Our football field was fenced in, but backed up against some house backyards. The school tore down the bleachers on that side of the field by the houses. They were the visitor bleachers, so were decently short, and replaced them with new home side bleachers that cost over $1 million. These were way taller, and blocked out the sun from the houses they were by. The bleachers were east of the houses, so the houses didn't get sunlight till afternoon. After some complaints, it was discovered the school built the bleachers before they got the permits to do so. Dunno if they figured they'd get it during construction or didn't give a speep or what, but ultimately the school had to tear them down. One of the main people who lived in an affected house and fought for the bleachers to get torn down due to the no permits had a daughter in school at the time. And she got bullied by a lot of people, and that family regularly received death threats. Just a few years ago, one of the deans got in legal trouble cause he was doing illegal locker searches. He resigned as a dean, but somehow came back on as a math teacher in the same school. Last I heard, kids made fun of him to the point that he left. Finally, a kid died via suicide and implicated being bullied as the reason why, and named the bullies. Turns out, he'd gone to the deans about this multiple times, but the bullies were football players, so it got ignored. After the suicide, the whole situation got swept under the rug, with the school refusing to accept any responsibility, and students got in trouble for talking about it. No offense, but your school is utterly cursed. If this counts, but 2 students at my school made a sex tape and the video spread like crazy. Everyone watched it, and some people would watch it at school with friends like WTF. The teachers had to keep telling students that it was illegal to have the video, and if we got caught sending it to others we'd be in serious trouble. There was some teacher visiting our school who thought it was a smart plan to educate kids 15, 16, 17-ish on drugs. It was actually a smart plan, except for that he took a suitcase with the actual drugs with him. I don't know the full story because I didn't attend that lecture. What I do know though, is that a bag of actual cocaine was stolen from that suitcase. There was a whole manhunt going on for the person who had stolen it, but they never found who stole it or the cocaine. I will now proceed to snort this cocaine to show you how bad it is.